Good afternoon and welcome to today's Democratic primary debate for Indiana State Senate District 15. I'm Derrick Holder, host of Hold 'em Accountable and your moderator for today's discussion. Today's debate is presented by Progressive Indiana Network, an independent media collaborative supporting Indiana-focused progressive journalism, analysis, and commentary. The network provides a shared platform for writers, podcasters, and creators committed to covering state and local politics with independence and accountability. You can learn more at progressiveindiana.net. Primary elections are often the most important elections many voters never see. They are where the direction of a party is shaped and where the voters decide not just who will appear on the ballot in November, but what kind of leadership they want moving forward. Joining us are the two candidates seeking the Democratic nominations, Chloe Andis and Julie McGill. Both candidates are stepping forward to represent the communities of this district in the Indiana State House. And today's conversation is an opportunity for voters to hear directly from them about their priorities, their ideas, and their vision. Here's how the debate will work. Each candidate will begin with a brief opening statement. From there, we will move through several policy statements covering issues important to Hoosiers in District 15, including the economy, healthcare, education, and public safety. Candidates will have 90 seconds to respond to each question. Later in the debate, we will move into a rapid-fire segment called Hold 'em or Fold 'em. And we will conclude with closing statements where each candidate will have the opportunity to speak directly to the voters. We ask our candidates to keep their answers focused and respectful so we can make the most out of our time together. Most importantly, this debate is about the voters. It's about giving the people of District 15 the information they need to make an informed decision when they head to the polls. With that, let's begin. Each candidate will now have 2 minutes for an opening statement. By coin flip before the debate, Julie McGill will go first.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Julie McGill, and I'm running for Indiana State Senate District 15. I am not a career politician. I'm a mom of 3, a business owner, and a lifelong Fort Wayne resident. I grew up here, I raised my family here, and I'm not going anywhere. My path to this race started when my first child was born with profound disabilities. I didn't know it then, but that is what led me on my path to run. Oh, goodness. I'm sorry. I'm a little bit nervous. I am not a career politician, like I said. Panic. Okay, so when my child was first born with profound disabilities, I suddenly found myself navigating systems that families never expected to deal with. Medicaid, disability services, and the safety nets that keep families afloat during crisis. During my time inside of those public systems, I've seen how state decisions affect real people. That's what's pushed me to step forward. Today, as a business owner and a property owner, I also see the other side, the cost of running a business, creating jobs, and keeping our local economy strong. Because what looks like a line item in the state budget can mean the difference between stability and crisis for a family. Indiana keeps making decisions that look cheaper on paper, but cost us far more in the long run. My approach is simple. I just want to propose common sense solutions, bring our tax dollars back to Indiana, support working parents, protect vulnerable seniors and residents, and focus the legislature on practical results instead of political ideology.
Thank you, Julie. And now for Chloe Andis.
Hi, Derrick. Thanks again for holding this. I think this is a wonderful opportunity for the voters to get to meet their candidates running for District 15. My name is Chloe Andis. I'm a U.S. Air Force veteran, a national security professional, MBA, and union worker. running for the Indiana State Senate District 15, representing Fort Wayne, Allen County, and Northeast Indiana. Listen, I grew up here. I'm a graduate of Carroll High School up in Northwest Allen. I left, like so many Hoosiers do, to serve in our nation's military. I worked as a Chinese translator. I became a mission manager. And then after leaving the military, continued my work of service in national security work from DC to Baltimore and all the way across to the western side of the country. After continuing my service, I pivoted into the private sector. I moved to New York City. I earned my graduate degree from New York University, and then worked in aerospace startups and defense consulting. And I say all that because I've seen how institutions fail. I saw the COVID-19 pandemic, I saw the Black Lives Matter movement, and I saw the January 6th insurrection through intelligence eyes, as well as my own, and learn not just the failures of our institutions, but how easily political narratives can be shaped to divide people instead of helping them. And after all those experiences, I made a decision that surprised a lot of people, and I came home to Indiana. And I'm running because the freedoms and rights of Hoosiers should never be treated as political bargaining chips, as they so often are. But my story isn't about me. This story isn't about me. It's about you, because it's about exactly what Derrick said. It's about the voters. I left Indiana to serve my country, and I came back to serve my community, because the state and all the Hoosiers who live here are worth fighting for.
Let's begin with an issue that affects nearly every household in Indiana: the cost of living and economic security for working families. Indiana lawmakers passed State Enrolled Act 1 in 2025, a major property tax reform aimed at providing relief to homeowners while also raising concerns from some local governments about potential impacts on school funding and local services. At the same time, many Hoosiers continue to debate what truly fair tax system should look like. In your view, what does tax fairness mean in Indiana? And when it comes to funding the services our community relies on, where should the tax burden primarily lie? Homeowners, businesses, higher earners, or a different bounce altogether? Chloe, you have first shot at this.
Sure, thank you. As we think about economic growth and economic stability here in District 15, we're seeing both. From Huntertown, that is rapidly growing up in Northwest Allen, to the more central part of Fort Wayne, you have a dichotomy between growth and between stability. And I think both have been mismanaged by the current state legislature. When we think about revenue generation methods and infrastructure built to support not just the state, but working families here in Allen County and across Indiana, we need to think beyond property taxes. I like the framing that you gave me in thinking about where those dollars should come from. Billionaires and mega corporations should be paying their fair share, but we provide so many tax abatements to attract large corporations and businesses to Indiana, when instead we should be making Indiana worthwhile to stay for the people. If we do that, we don't have to undersell ourselves and provide such a massive amount of money to attract talent. We make Indiana hospitable and give people the ability to thrive here. That's the key right here. And so I want to see new areas explored of revenue generation, such as investing and legalizing marijuana here in the state. I want to see us look beyond the establishment of casinos to drive local revenue generation. I want to work with the local governments that are here in our counties and Fort Wayne to understand what the needs are, what the costs are, so that we can tie our revenue generation methods to the reality of what we need to spend.
Thank you, Chloe. And Julie, would you like me to repeat the question for you?
Yes, please.
In your view, what does tax fairness mean in Indiana? And when it comes to funding the services our communities rely on, where should the tax burden primarily lie? Homeowners, businesses, higher earners, or a different balance altogether?
I think the tax burden should lie on the people that can afford the tax burden. Right now, too many working families are struggling to be able to pay their bills, and they're being taxed to death, while there's people that are rich on paper and not paying any taxes because they're writing it all off as business losses. I think it's important for us to look at those loopholes to make sure that the people that can afford to pay their fair share are paying their fair share. And then the other thing, as far as stabilizing Indiana and prices, our legislation right now focuses too much on these big corporations for job growth. They aren't looking at the big picture. They're not looking at medium-sized industries that maybe don't grow the jobs the way that they prioritize, but they still create economic value to our economy and increase other people's wages. I'm most specifically thinking about agriculture, getting something sort of medium-sized in there. Right now, all of our incentives are for those large businesses, but if we can stimulate some of that medium-sized growth, we can start to build that infrastructure and make some of those growing pains a little bit smoother, and just really capitalize on what Indiana has to offer instead of just being focused on one method. So kind of reevaluating how everything's scored and reviewing those incentives to make sure that the economic value is being measured appropriately and not just entirely by job value. The other thing that I think Indiana is lacking on is the
Thank you, Julie. Next question. Julie will go first on this one. Indiana lawmakers passed House Enrolled Act 1 in 2026 with the goal of increasing housing supply and addressing affordability across the state. Supporters argue it will help spur development and bring more housing to the market. Critics, however, say it may limit the ability of local governments to regulate development and could benefit developers more than working families. In your view, did HEA 1 go far enough to address Indiana's housing affordability challenges, or did it miss the mark? And how would you address the housing affordability issue?
I think it missed the mark. We really need to be focusing on these large landlords and out-of-state investors to make sure that the properties that they are maintaining in the community are up to par. A lot of these people that are renting, they have things broken and they have bad landlords. Their landlords aren't in town, and they're buying up all these properties and really decreasing the amount that we have available in inventory. So I would like to see some more regulations on large size landlords to kind of rein in all the small single family housing monopolies, and because I don't think that developing more houses is going to solve the problem.
And Chloe, would you like me to repeat the question for you?
No, that's okay. So even just this morning, I was up in Kendallville at a town hall with Senator Suglick and Representative Abbott, and Abbott spoke quite a bit on this bill and on housing at large in Indiana. The average cost of a house in Indiana is almost $250,000. We have combined the issues of unaffordability and high costs alongside a minimum wage that hasn't changed since 2009 and wages across the board that haven't kept up with the increased cost of living from a national view to a state view. And so when I think of how we improve our current situation of affordable housing, you can take it all the way down as to its simplest form and think supply meets demand. Right now, we don't have the supply. And so I think we're so focused, and the state is so focused on increasing that supply through developers and building additional units, building houses, making sure that those relationships exist with local governments from the county and city. But we also need to think about realistically what investment properties do and how that limits supply as well. And so I want to see this from across the board, improving supply of housing, regardless of how we do it, to our younger generations as they enter the workforce and start to build their families. Derrick, you're muted.
I knew that. Chloe, you'll be the first one to answer this one. Okay. Indiana lawmakers passed House Enrolled Act 2 in 2026 with the stated goal of addressing rising utility costs and modernizing how large energy users, including new data centers, connect to the power grid. Mm-hmm. At the same time, questions continue to be raised about how utility rates are set in Indiana. The Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission is appointed by the governor, and utilities and their trade groups are major contributors to many political campaigns. Meanwhile, large energy consumers like data centers are expected to dramatically increase electricity demand across the state. Given these factors, what steps would you support to ensure utility rates remain fair and affordable for everyday Hoosiers while still allowing Indiana to grow its economy?
Yeah, data centers are a blight upon the state. And as we think about the not just utility bills in terms of electric, but what this has done to gas, what this is doing to water supply and our costs and the amount of generation that it takes and the dependence, the impacts on air quality. We're looking at data centers collectively as a country, as a source of economic stability when we're putting the cart before the horse. And so as I think about electric bills, listen, mine has gone up like 50% in the past 6 months. It's insane. And we place, there has been legislation passed to attempt to hold large energy conglomerates like AEP accountable for their own costs as they work in tandem with these companies that are setting up data centers to provide those electricity, to provide that electrical generation. But that's not happening. It's something like 80% of new generation costs are offloaded onto residents, and I think that's what we're seeing now. I went to a town hall up here in Fort Wayne with the Indiana commission that deals with energy, and the response was, as you might expect, it was lackluster and ultimately in favor of these large corporations. And until we realize that we need to work away from that, the pain will continue.
And Julie, you're up next. Would you like me to repeat the question?
Utility costs are a big problem. Right now, data centers are a big issue. Our government is looking to bring in revenue any way possible, even if that hurts our communities or the local people. If data centers are going to be built here, first of all, they need to be built not on prime farmland. And they also need to pay their fair share in taxes. We shouldn't be subsidizing their utility cost on our bill. We have enough stuff to take care of. I'd like to see some utility caps, especially for those seniors, and just really rein in the greed from the utility company now. See how maybe we can get some sort of competition in there. Because right now they can just kind of do whatever that they want to do. So I think that utilities really need additional oversight that they're not currently getting, some more rules and restrictions so we can protect people. Businesses are always going to exploit people if we let them. That's what we have laws for. So we need to be writing laws regarding utilities in favor of the people that live here and work here and pay taxes here.
Economic stability is deeply connected to another major challenge facing Hoosier families: access to affordable health care and the ability to make personal medical decisions. Let's turn now to health care and reproductive rights. Julie, you'll have the first shot at this question. Healthcare costs are a major driver of the affordability crisis for many Hoosier families. Across the country, states are experimenting with different approaches to bring costs down, including public insurance options, stronger price transparency laws, limiting the role of managed care organizations, and expanding state-supported coverage programs. Indiana currently operates the Healthy Indiana Plan, which provides coverage for many low-income residents. Some policymakers have suggested expanding that model or exploring broader public options to reach more Hoosiers. In your view, what role should the state of Indiana play in lowering healthcare costs? Should the Healthy Indiana Plan be expanded to cover more residents, potentially even all Hoosiers, or should the state pursue other strategies to make healthcare more affordable?
So healthcare is one of the main reasons of why I'm running. I have a home care business. My son has profound disabilities, and I see all the cuts that they're currently making with Medicaid and how devastating it absolutely is for families. I see these rural communities not be able to have providers or hospitals nearby. I think that this is a really big issue in Indiana because it snowballs. When you're not healthy, then your costs go up down the line because you require more expensive care, or maybe now you're not working because you couldn't take care of this illness and now you're not paying taxes. So I really do think it's important. I think expanding the Healthy Indiana Plan is something that should definitely be explored. The federal government reimburse the state of Indiana about 90% for all of the coverage that they pay for under the Healthy Indiana Plan. So to me, that's just a good investment to spend 10% to get 90% back to, fund our economy, take care of our people, and do all of those things. So I like the idea of expanding the Healthy Indiana Plan, but I definitely think that there's other options like those private employer pools and things of that nature.
Chloe?
Yeah, the state should play a heavy role in lowering healthcare costs. And I think as we think about HIP, as somebody who's been on it previously, it doesn't go far enough. The pains that we have here locally, I know of a couple that was bankrupted that worked at Parkview and yet was bankrupted through medical debt. Indiana consistently ranks near the bottom for health outcomes. Working families choose to skip care for groceries or rent or what have you, and this delays treatment. Jobs no longer guarantee access, and this is because the state polity has created so much coverage gaps. Health access tied to your employer is a shortfall. And I think if we had mechanisms in the state to provide some type of mechanism for universal health care, that we would prevent so many of these issues that working families and working Hoosiers face day in and day out. We let preventable conditions become emergencies because we don't have an infrastructure that provides for the people. And I think that alongside other legislation that has been passed this session, administrative changes haven't gone far enough to truly close the gaps. I want to see expanded Medicaid eligibility. I want to see an improved Medicaid waiver process. I want to revoke tax advantages from nonprofit hospital systems that don't function as nonprofits. And so this is the basic responsibility of a functioning state, and Indiana can do better.
Chloe, you'll have the first shot at this one. In 2022, Indiana passed Senate Enrolled Act 1, a near total abortion ban that remains tied up in the courts. At the same time, the legislature has considered and passed several bills affecting transgender Hoosiers, particularly around healthcare and participation in public life. These debates raise a broader question about bodily autonomy and the role of the government. In your view, what role, if any, should the government play in deciding what individuals can do with their own bodies, particularly when it comes to reproductive health and gender-affirming care?
Yeah. When I think about this, at large, What we've seen in the past several decades is that Republican leadership functions on restriction rather than freedom. And as a trans woman, I've seen that through Liz Brown's push through this session of Senate Bill 182. And even though it failed, she has confirmed that if she is reelected, that she will push it again next session. When we think about bodily autonomy and women's rights to reproductive access, and how, again, incumbent Senator Liz Brown has chosen to restrict essentially all access to abortion in Indiana, while also pushing Senate Bill 245 to criminalize mifepristone and misoprostol, it is doing harm to Hoosiers for their choice to be pro-life. And in reality, that's pro-birth. I am tired of cutting off our nose to spite our face from our leadership in their choices that only effectively hurt our women and our children, when we should be actively helping them. And I want to hold legislators accountable for using women's bodies, for using trans bodies as a political battleground. Let's get back to the issues that matter in terms of affordability. I may be trans, but I still have to pay my rent.
Julie?
So I have not been happy with what's been going on in Indiana in the same capacity as Chloe. I think that focusing on this ideology really misses the mark of what affects most people. You probably don't really encounter that many trans people on a day-to-day thing, but everybody can relate to not being able to pay their rent or their utility bill skyrocketing out of control. I'm obviously pro-choice, but I also understand that we're in a Republican legislation. So I would want to work to partner with them. If I can't get it repealed and free choice in there completely, then my next goal would be to make there be more exceptions and for people to understand that it's more of a nuanced situation than black or white. Right now, the state has put people in a very difficult situation. If you know that you're going to have a baby born with disabilities, let's say a feeding tube, you don't really have a lot of options to qualify for Medicaid because of your child's disability. And private insurance doesn't cover feeding tube supplies. So some of these families are put between a rock and a hard place. You can't make a choice ahead of time, and you can't be taken care of after the fact. And I think we need to provide more supports for those type of people.
Healthcare shapes the well-being of families, but education shapes the future of our communities. Let's talk about Indiana schools and what the state can do to support students, parents, and educators. Julie, you have first shot at this question. Indiana is facing significant shortages in two of the most critical professions in our communities: healthcare workers and teachers. Hospitals, clinics, and school districts across the state report difficulty recruiting and retaining qualified professionals, and some Hoosiers are leaving the state for opportunities elsewhere. What steps should the state take to prevent this kind of brain drain and ensure Indiana can attract and keep the professionals our communities depend on? And how would you make Indiana a more attractive place for educators and healthcare workers to build long-term careers?
So the education system right now, we're a little bit stretched on funds because we've opened the door up to vouchers. And right now, I do think that vouchers hold a place for those individuals where public school is not working for them. But I don't think it should subsidize private school for those individuals that were going to go regardless or have exorbitant amounts of money. Indiana just recently lifted their income cap for vouchers. So if Elon Musk moves here with his 20 children, each one of those would qualify for their own voucher. And so that pulls dollars away from our public school systems and it gives it to people that don't need it. So I would really like to see the voucher program be redesigned and relooked at. Maybe there needs to be income caps. Maybe there needs to be prerequisites that you've had to go to public school, because a lot of these people receiving these vouchers right now have never even stepped foot inside of a public school. So now we're giving away all these funds that we never had to give away before. And if you think that every child deserves an education and that they should still get their vouchers, that's great. But then we need to come up with the money somewhere else, because our school systems are suffering and our state is short-sighted on wages. So we need to have stronger wages so we can attract these people and build a good foundation for our students to be educated and be able to, be successful in the future, make Indiana's economy grow and stronger. We really got to start at the bottom with the basic building blocks. And we're not doing that right now. We're just looking at a line item and making decisions instead of seeing the impact overall.
Thank you, Julie. And now, Chloe.
Private school vouchers should not be funded by the state. Full stop. My goodness. We're stealing money from our public school system to fund private schools. That's not okay. We've tried to run our education system in Indiana like a business at the expense of our children. And not only are we hurting our children, but we're hurting our retainment of talent, of this brain drain that you're talking about. And not only does that come from our weakened education system as we subsidize private schools, but think about this at large, because we have legislation that doesn't really empower working families, but it does provide tax abatements to billionaires and mega corporations to attract them to the states. And so because of this, we have such a lopsided infrastructure of attractment to Indiana, and that deals with retention of teachers and retention of healthcare professionals. And so I want to empower public schools rather than let those funds be siphoned off into our private schools. It's a misuse of taxpayer money to not provide funding to public schools, because again, this is what it leads to. I want to hold this legislation that has been in power for decades accountable for where our education system is in Indiana.
Chloe, you have first shot at this question. This week, the governor and secretary of state announced a new partnership allowing the organization Turning Point USA to become more involved in activities within Indiana public schools. Supporters say this is about encouraging civic engagement among students. Critics argue that giving a partisan political organization access to public schools risks turning classrooms into ideological battlegrounds rather than places focused on education and critical thinking. From your perspective, is it appropriate for the state to effectively endorse or partner with political organizations in public schools? And what boundaries should exist to ensure public education remains focused on learning rather than partisan influence?
Yeah, so even outside of the political organization that Turning Point is, it's also a religious organization. And are we just completely tossing away the separation of church and state in this country? Because it feels like it. I want to see the Satanic Temple enter Indiana and try and set up a Turning Point clone and see how that works through our public school system, because I think we all know what the result of that would be. No, this is very clearly a partisan decision to incorporate Christian nationalist ideology into our public schools. The zealotry that comes from the leadership of these organizations like Turning Point and like our governor, who has so grandly championed Turning Point's integration into our public school system, is it's un-American. I can't believe that we have to debate this in 2026, but it is un-American. And so I want to see it kind of goes back to the private voucher system. We're again subsidizing private vouchers to have access to religious affiliated private schools. And now we're also bringing that same method, that same conglomerate into our public schools. And I want to see us remove these partisan influences from our public school systems. It should have never happened in the first place. But again, my job as senator is to make sure that legislation passes so that this never happens again in the future.
Julie?
I agree with Chloe. I think that there should be separation of church and state. I know that there's been a really big push lately to blur those lines, and I don't think that that is appropriate. I think it makes some individuals feel out of place. I think if we're going to put like the 10 commandments in the classroom, that there's an easy way to compromise and not have it be the 10 commandments, but the 10 kindness acts, and make it something that's not religious, but still beneficial for people and their moral character. There's a way to do this where everybody can get along and we can still push the points that people are trying to push, which is just to be, a good person. And I think that we can all agree that we would like to be good people. So, just maybe coming together with less religious solutions that can maybe accomplish the same things that they're looking to do. But I think that there should be a ban on any sort of clubs and affiliations that are tied to religion or ideology entering our public school systems.
Beyond schools and healthcare, the strength of a community also depends on safe neighborhoods and reliable infrastructure. Let's turn now to public safety and the systems that keep our communities functioning. Julie, you'll have first shot at this question. Many economists and policymakers now describe childcare as part of the state's human infrastructure, because without reliable childcare, many parents simply cannot participate fully in the workforce. In 2026, Indiana passed House Enrolled Act 1177, which expands tax credits for businesses that help employees cover childcare costs and allows local redevelopment commissions to use revenue from TIF districts to support childcare access. At the same time, the state reduced funding through the Child Care and Development Fund, which helps lower income families afford care. In your view, is Indiana doing enough to address the child care affordability and access crisis? And beyond the policies already passed, what additional steps should the state take to ensure families can find and afford quality child care while supporting a strong workforce?
I think right now Indiana is not doing enough. In fact, I would say that they're doing the opposite of enough when they cut the child care voucher programs. That's another program that just doesn't make good mathematical sense. We get such a big match from the federal government. Why are we not taking that money and providing childcare for people that want to work? Because those workers pay taxes. And if they don't work, they don't pay taxes. So again, it's just Indiana being short-sighted and not looking at the big picture and not looking long-term. Yes, you're going to save some money by not running that program this year, but what kind of ripple effects is that going to have next year? Or even more immediately, how many people aren't able to work right now because they can't find childcare? It is a mortgage payment to be able to afford childcare these days. It is just absolutely expensive. I think the state could definitely be doing more. I think that they need to be putting the dollars into the hands of the people that use the services, not in the hands of businesses that might mismanage it or skim stuff off the top and not do exactly what they say they're going to do. Let the people spend their money where they need to, and that will drive the natural market to bring more child care centers in and create more of an inventory of them, so to speak.
Chloe?
Yeah, so following a comment that was made in the last round that we want to build good people, right? Well, good people are built from funded public school systems, and good people are built from funded childcare systems. We should not be saving money as a state from taking money from childcare systems and not investing in our children. As we think about retainment, as we think about Hoosier growth and stability. This is all connected, and it does start from the very beginning, from childcare. I think that studies show the ROI on every dollar invested in childcare averages out between something like $7 to $12 in return in economic development and economic growth. And if we fund childcare completely as a state, similar to how New Mexico did, once we have created these other sources of revenue generation in the state, once we have built an infrastructure worthy of our children as Hoosiers to maintain those Hoosier values, that's what the legislature should be doing. And that's what I will push as state senator for District 15. Childcare in Indiana has been climbing for decades. And I think we also need to realize that the context of the pandemic. In 2020, the state lost something like 20% of its workforce. We need to reset that market. We need to fund childcare, and we need to invest in our children.
Chloe, you will have first shot at this question. We received this question from someone going by Citizen 8366 in Fort Wayne. There is an alarming number of cameras all over the city streets. What is your plan of action regarding police surveillance?
We should not be creating a police state in Indiana. The overwhelming creation of these flock cameras that are popping up all over Fort Wayne is disgusting. What are we doing? I know that local institutions, local police institutions, the police unions are working with AI companies to surveil American citizens. And as I think about the connection between flock cameras and the surveillance state and bills pushed like Liz Brown's SB 76 in compelling local police jurisdictions to work with immigration and customs enforcement, this is all connected. When we think about the installation of data centers in our state that fuel these AI companies that are using flock cameras to, again, surveil American citizens, it is all connected. I can remember, listen, my experience as an intelligence analyst and mission manager within my service, I served at NSA Hawaii about a year after Edward Snowden left. And I came into an environment that was so focused on the spying on American citizens. And what I saw was completely against what we're doing today. I cannot believe that we have come so far from the installation of policies put against, again, American citizen surveillance, and yet we have these flock cameras popping up through local police jurisdictions doing exactly that. We need to stop. We need to build legislation in the state house that repeals that.
Julie?
So I have been really concerned on a national level, which doesn't really goes a little bit beyond Indiana with all of the surveillance and what is happening there. We definitely don't want a police state. We don't want to be tracked every moment. We don't want to constantly feel like we have eyes on us. But we want to be safe, and we want our roads to be safer. So the only way to really do both, get rid of the cameras and continue to be safe, is to have a stronger police force presence. And I think that would go a long way in helping public safety overall, because right now I don't think that our officers are on the street near as much as that they need to be. And I think that these cameras are kind of a cop-out for hiring people, and we need people. So I would just really like to see there be less cameras around and to see more police officers keeping our areas safe.
Julie, you'll have first shot at this question. Immigration policy is often described or often debated at the national level, but its effects are felt directly in local communities. Critics of aggressive immigration enforcement argue that when local institutions are required to cooperate with federal immigration authorities like U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, it can make immigrant communities less likely to report crimes, seek help, or engage with schools and local government. Recently, Indiana lawmakers mandated that local governments schools, and universities cooperate with federal immigration authorities. Supporters say this strengthens law enforcement coordination, while opponents worry it could undermine trust and safety in immigrant communities. In a region like Fort Wayne, which is home to a large Burmese and Hispanic populations, how would you work to protect immigrant families, maintain trust between communities and local institutions, and ensure that public safety is strengthened rather than weakened?
So none of us want somebody to come here and break the rules and come here illegally. But we also know that the immigration system is broken, and there's plenty of people that are wrapped up in it right now, for no fault of their own. And so there's got to be a way to get people out or to give them a path to citizenship that is humane. I think that there needs to be some things that are off limits, because kids need to go to school without fear. Even immigrant children, even if they're not here, they're undocumented, they still need to go to school. And by not educating them, all we're going to do is hurt us as a nation and hurt those individuals. Same thing with like the police and public safety. Those rules have been there for that reason, because these communities will not call if they have something happening. And so that does not create a safer community for all of us. People need to feel like there are places that they can go and things that they can do without fear of being questioned or detained, because this affects not even just those that are here undocumented. It affects those that are here legally as well, but they're wrapped up in all this because they're being racially profiled. So I believe that we should have some places be sanctuaries and be off limits: schools, churches, the police.
Chloe?
Yeah, I've already brought up SB 76, so I won't beat the dead horse on that one. But I got to say that public safety doesn't mean putting more cops on the street. It means empowering organizations outside the police union, outside our local jurisdictions, that actually help people. You know, I was canvassing a few months ago down in the southeast side of Fort Wayne, and I spoke to a Latino woman, probably mid-50s, but was here living with her family and her extended family. And what she told me, and this is so heartbreaking to be on someone's doorstep and hear this story, what she told me is that her son could no longer work because he was afraid of being black bagged by ICE. And so it put her back into work after she had already retired. And just the conversations that I've had with people in the community through community organizations like Fuerza Unida and through Café con Fuerza, local organizations are popping up and building neighborly organizational infrastructure to protect each other because their state legislature is failing them. Their representatives are failing them. Not only are they not pushing legislation, they're not even having these conversations with their constituents and their own communities that they're supposed to represent. That's where this starts. That is how public safety is strengthened, is through conversations with the actual people that live here. And I didn't even touch on the Burmese, and it boggles the mind how Indiana provided for them in the past is now trying to rip that away. It takes us to speak out when others are afraid to do so.
Thank you both. That's exactly the kind of thoughtful discussion voters deserve. Up to this point tonight, we've taken the time to explore policy in depth. You've heard the candidates explain their ideas, their priorities, and how they would approach the challenges facing Indiana and District 15. But voters also want something else. They want clarity. They want to know quickly and directly where the people asking for their vote actually stand. So now we're moving into a segment that viewers of Hold 'em Accountable know very well. It's called Hold 'em or Fold 'em. Here's how it works. I'll present a series of policy ideas that could realistically come before the Indiana State Senate. For each one, I'll ask the candidates to tell us whether they would hold them, meaning they support it, or fold them, meaning they would oppose it. This round moves quickly. The goal is simple: give voters a clear snapshot of where each candidate stands. So let's shuffle the deck and get started. We'll start with Chloe. Legalizing cannabis for adult recreational use in Indiana.
Hold them.
Julie?
Hold them.
Allowing Indiana voters to decide major issues through statewide ballot initiatives or referendums. Julie?
Hold them.
Chloe?
Please hold them.
Allowing cannabis tax revenue to fund public schools and mental health programs. Chloe?
Hold the hell out of them.
Julie?
Hold them.
Creating a statewide paid family and medical leave program. Julie?
Hold them.
Chloe?
Hold them.
Guaranteeing free breakfast and lunch for all students in public schools. Chloe?
Hold them.
Julie?
Hold them.
Replacing the gas tax over time with a mileage-based road usage fee. Julie?
Fold them.
Chloe?
Hold them.
Requiring legislative approval before any new toll road projects can move forward. Chloe?
Hold them.
Julie?
Hold them tight.
Establishing rent stabilization policies in the communities facing housing affordability crises. Julie?
Fold them.
Chloe?
Grip them tight and hold them, baby.
Limiting vouchers so they are only available to low-income families. Chloe?
Fold them. Get rid of them entirely.
Julie?
Hold them.
Increasing funding for traditional public schools before expanding vouchers or charter programs. Julie?
100% hold them.
Chloe?
Hold them.
Creating a universal pre-K program in Indiana. Chloe?
Hold them.
Julie?
Hold them.
Raising the statewide minimum wage above the federal level. Julie?
Hold them.
Chloe?
2030 by 2030. Hold them.
Expanding the Healthy Indiana plan to cover more residents. Chloe?
Hold them.
Julie?
Hold them.
Restoring stronger local control over zoning and housing development decisions. Julie?
Hold them.
Chloe?
Hold them.
Creating stricter limits on campaign donations from utilities regulated by the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission. Chloe?
Could you repeat that one? I'm sorry.
Creating stricter limits on campaign donations from utilities regulated by the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission.
Hold them.
Julie?
Hold it for all of them.
Establishing an independent redistricting commission for Indiana legislative maps. Julie?
If it's nonpartisan, hold them.
Julie? Or Chloe, sorry.
Hold them.
Opposing the creation of a governor-controlled security force, sometimes referred to critics as a private army, such as proposals tied to the Indiana National Guard structure or similar initiatives. Chloe?
Hold them.
Julie?
Hold them.
Thank you to both candidates for moving through that round. The goal of Hold 'em or Fold 'em is to give voters a quick snapshot of where candidates stand on a range of issues that could come before Indiana State Senate. And today, we've covered a lot of ground. We're now going to move into a final portion of this afternoon's debate, closing statements. This is an opportunity for each candidate to speak directly to the residents of Indiana State Senate District 15 and explain why they believe they are the right person to represent this community in the State House. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for their closing remarks. Julie, you will go first since Chloe chose the last word during the coin flip. Your 2 minutes begins now.
When I decided to run for this seat, people asked me, why would a mom of three, a small business owner, and someone who's never run for office run? And it's because the people who live with the consequences of these policy decisions are rarely the people in the room when the decisions get made. I've spent enough years on the wrong side of that door to know exactly what it costs. I am tired of being ignored. My son has profound disabilities, and my family became entirely dependent on systems that most people never think about until they need them. I learned those systems from the inside out. I learned where they work and I learned where they fail. That experience didn't make me, I guess it made me a little bit bitter, but it also made me better at this, because what's happening isn't a partisan problem, it's a math problem. Indiana keeps making decisions that look cheaper on paper, but costs us far more in the long run. We turn down federal dollars that would come straight back to Fort Wayne. We cut childcare support and then wonder why businesses can't find workers. We delay care for seniors until a manageable situation becomes a crisis that costs 3 times as much to fix. That's not fiscal conservatism, that's bad math. And working families are the ones paying the price. My job has always been to find the hidden costs, trace the unintended consequences, and to build something that actually works. And that's what I'd like to do for District 15. This isn't about policy, it's about community. I was born here, my children are growing up here, and my stake in District 15 is not political, it's permanent. I'm not building a resume, I am fighting for the place I call home. If we start making decisions based on long-term thinking, honest numbers, and real accountability, the families of District 15 are going to be great. Our schools will be stronger, our parents will be secure, and our seniors will be protected. That's the Indiana I'm running to build, and I would be honored to earn your vote. Thank you.
And Chloe for the final word.
Yeah, final word. You know, as we think about the power of a primary, it's not about me. It's about you. I said that at the very beginning, and that's going to be my closing statement today because I firmly believe that. This is about you as the voter and feeling empowered in choosing who you want to represent you in the state house. We talked so much about different communities today, from the communities of immigrants and how they're impacted by Senate Bill 76, from teachers and healthcare providers, how they're impacted by our weakened education system and lack of retention of talented individuals. We talked about working families, about rural communities, about the differences that they hold from our more urban populations, and how we need to actually have conversations with all of these different areas of all of these different people to represent them all. That is the point of leadership, is to set ourselves aside and actually advocate for the people that live here beyond our immediate vicinity, for people that we might not have anything in common with, but still are elected to represent no matter what side of the aisle you are on. Because I guarantee you, no matter how you vote, I am still going to represent you when I am your state senator. That is the power of the primary, because it's about the voters. So please feel empowered to use that greatest power that you have in determining who your representation is. Go vote in the primary, go vote in the general, and choose who you want to lead District 15. Thank you.
Thank you to both our candidates today, Chloe Andis and Julie McGill, for taking the time to participate in this conversation and for stepping forward to serve the people of Indiana's 15th State Senate District. Running for public office is not easy. It requires time, sacrifice, courage, and a willingness to put your ideas and values in front of the public for scrutiny. Regardless of where voters ultimately land in this primary, the fact that individuals are willing to step up and participate in the democratic process is something that deserves respect. Primary elections are often receive less attention than general elections, but in many ways, they are where the direction of leadership is decided. Primaries are where voters ask tough questions, examine competing ideas, and determine who will carry the values and priorities of their party into the general election. For voters in District 15, that decision now rests in your hands. Debates like this are not about declaring winners and losers in a single setting. They're about helping voters better understand the people who are asking for their trust and their vote. They're about giving candidates the opportunity to explain not just what they believe, but how they plan to lead. And leadership matters. It matters in how lawmakers approach different decisions. It matters in how they represent their communities in Indianapolis. And if you're watching this today and live in District 15, the most important thing you can do now is simple. Vote. Learn about the candidates. Talk with your neighbors, ask questions, and make sure your voice is heard when the primary election arrives. Thank you again to Chloe and Julie for joining us today. And thank you to everyone who tuned in to watch. This debate was produced by Progressive Indiana Network as part of its effort to help voters stay informed ahead of the primary election. I'm Derrick Holder. Stay informed, ask questions, and as always, hold them accountable.